It's only my opinion. Coffee milk.
I guess we're just going to dive right into it, and we're going to head into the topic for this week. And the reason why I chose this topic is because I saw a story out with Lauryn Hill. So the topic this week is discipline, sort of how to discipline your child, and maybe talk a little bit how we got disciplined and sort of compare notes.
Uh-oh.
But the reason why I decided to do this topic is because Lauryn Hill is in the news for disciplining her child. And so I guess her child wrote this whole thing on the experience and the trauma sort of being beaten by a belt, sort of the physical abuse that she had to sort of endure. And so, but the thing that really sparked my interest in this was sort of the response from Lauryn Hill. She did say that, you know, she was okay. She encourages her daughter writing the piece. She said, Celia has every right to express herself. I encourage it, but she also got the discipline that Black children get because we are held to a different standards. And for me, I hated that. Like, I love Lauryn Hill, but to say that she got disciplined, she got beaten because that's what we have experienced and we're held to a higher standards, I don't feel like that's a reasonable... I just don't think it's reasonable to say that or use that as an excuse for the abuse. Yes, we are held to a different standards, but I don't think that we should be held to that standards by our parents, to that high of the standards where we're getting our ass whooped for little things. And as a person who comes from a culture that is very much, you know, belt. What is the saying? Spare the rod, you spoil the child, or some stuff or whatever. Like, my culture, the Jamaican culture, is very much about that. Like, you get ass whippings if you don't do what you're supposed to. So I guess I was brought up in a scenario where I did get my butt whooped. And I guess I would feel a certain way if I talked to my mom about it. I told my mom that I was, you know, I felt a certain way about it. And her response was, well, you know, you're held to a different standard. So, you know, that's what you get. Like, it just seems like there's no heart there, you know? Am I off, or...
I'm not sure I understand the whole held to a different standard thing. Explain that to me, because you said that you agree with that. Can you tell me what you mean by, like, what that's supposed to mean?
What do you mean that? Well, I don't say that I agree. I agree that Black people are held to a different standards.
Okay,
I'm not agreeing.
What do you mean by that?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
Well, in society, basically, is what I mean by that. Like, we have to, like, for instance, we'll just go at the simple thing. Barack Obama, for him to be president, he had to have had this kind of education. He had to have been this kind of Black man. He's very specific. And then we have someone like a Donald Trump or even a Bush who is just not even that bright or intelligent. So what I agree with her is saying that, yes, we are held by a different, we have to learn to be extra tough because we're held by different standards. We can't just sort of expect things to come to us. You have to be realistic about that. That's the part that I agree with.
Okay.
But I don't think that that's an okay reason to beat your child. And if your child has an issue with it, for you to say, hey, well, you get held by a different standard, so it's okay that I beat you or that I hate you, you know?
I think what Lauryn was trying to say was that since the consequences are so much more severe and immediate for Black children, which is definitely true, she felt that she needed to discipline them with like the utmost severity, so like they learned the first time. I think that's probably what she was trying to say. But I don't think, I mean, if you look at, I was looking at the psychological research before this, and if you look at the research, there's pretty good evidence that, you know, obviously a lot of kids get beat and they grow up fine, but it definitely getting beaten as a kid or getting spanked or whatever as a child, it definitely makes you more likely to engage in kind of impulsive antisocial behavior, which sort of is just the kind of thing that Black people, I think, get punished for more harshly than white people. So, I mean, I don't agree with the argument at all, even though I love Lauryn Hill.
Yeah, I just, she goes on, she has a bunch more things that she said. She said the discipline was seen through the lens of a young child who also had no place to reconcile me as a mom. And me as a larger than life figure, it took me a while to realize that my children, it took me a while to realize that my children and probably everyone who knew me saw me in this duality. So I feel like there's some things where she does, so I don't feel like she thinks that she was in the right 100%, right? I don't think she feels like, oh, you know, you get what you get type of deal. But I feel like she's sort of trying to, there's a fighting where she's trying to see it from her child's standpoint, but also that old school Black mentality where like I'm the parent and what I say go is also fighting that. Does that make sense? I feel like both of those things are sort of happening with her. I feel like it's hard for adults and Bianca, so you have a child, right? How do you plan on sort of raising your child? Are you going to be a sort of a punishment sort of mom, or are you going to be a sort of a little slap on the butt type of mother?
I definitely do not plan on hitting my child, period. I can't tell you exactly like how I'm going to deal with different situations. I mean, he's only one. Obviously, right now, everything that he does wrong is cute. And also just like, well, he's one. He doesn't know anything. And I hope to like almost kind of keep that assumption as he grows. Not that he doesn't know anything, but that we all have to realize that children's brains are just not like adult brains, obviously. Right. Like they're still growing, they're still learning things, they act on impulse. Right. I really want to make sure that I validate my son's feelings, because I think a lot of times that parents don't do that. I'm not going to speak badly about my mom. I think she raised me fairly okay. But like there were definitely times where like I didn't feel validated. You know, it's like I think, you know, before you start punishing me, why don't you understand why I'm feeling this way? Why I felt so mad that I needed to like break up whatever. I don't know. I never did any of that shit. But like, why do I feel so sad right now? Like, you know, why am I crying because my cousin took my toy? Like, right. Validate that child. Hey, I get it that it doesn't feel good when somebody takes something that you're enjoying. Mm-hmm. So let's figure out how to deal with that with our bodies. You know, like, first of all, okay, let's kind of relax. And if you can't relax, let's exercise. Like, let's go do jumping jacks or something. I actually did that with a kid who was in 7th grade, and I was teaching him. A special ed teacher actually taught me that trick to do like wall push-ups with the kid. Like go over to the wall, start doing, because you need something physically to do with your body. Because that kid would start bugging out, you know what I mean? And I'd be like, all right, what are you feeling right now? I feel angry. All right, well, you want to go do some push-ups? Yeah. You know what I mean? Calm down first. Then
I'm the same way. When I get angry, I just push-ups.
Just nice. That's why you're so buff and handsome.
Jake, how?
Yeah, go ahead.
How were you raised, Jake? Did you get sort of the you're grounded, go to your room sort of situation, or how was your household?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an upper middle class white person from like an northeastern city. So you said you kind of had this, or Cleon said he had the stereotypical Jamaican discipline. I had the stereotypical like white boy discipline.
Your mom counted to 3, didn't she?
Yeah. Go to your room.
Honestly, my mom thugged it out more than my dad did. My mom is Italian.
Did you guys sit and have family discussions when you did something terrible? Did you have to like?
So my earliest memories of being disciplined. First, they made me sit on the couch, but then they decided that was too comfortable, so they made me sit on the stairs. So that was about as bad as it got. So I have nothing to complain about. One thing I will say though is that I got a lot of "You won't stop right now." There was a lot of
What? That was a good day if you don't.
No, I'm saying, but what I was gonna say is that if you're getting hit on the regular, if an adult grabs you like that and gets in your face, you're gonna be like, what? You're gonna need to get hit. But since I was never getting slapped around, that shit put the fear of God in me. So yeah, I had it easy growing up. I'm not gonna front. But then again, I mean, in terms of like the racial differences, that's a relatively recent thing because like my mom got hit growing up.
Right.
And my dad got the shit beaten out of him growing up.
Do you think that it affected the way you are as an adult, the fact that you didn't get sort of hit? Do you think it changed anything about who you are now?
Yeah, 100%. It especially in my upbringing, I was always very, very afraid of violence. Like in high school, stuff like that. Obviously, we were all exposed to some like limited violence that you get exposed to in high school. And I was always very, very worried about that, and I never felt comfortable in those situations. And I noticed that my friends who got beaten by their parents were always more ready to throw down. So in retrospect, and then when I kind of involved myself in things like journalism in the Middle East and stuff, when I did have to engage in violence, like at first I was very awkward with it, but over time I sort of saw that there's a change in my headspace about it. And I definitely, I mean, I think it saved me from a lot of trouble in high school because I never wanted to get in fist fights back then. I was always very afraid of that stuff.
But I don't think that's because like I said, I got beat when I was younger. It didn't make me that made me an angry person. It didn't make me a violent person though. Like I wasn't trying to get into fights with anybody. Okay. But I was quick to like I'm ready to go at any time, but I never tried to initiate any kind of physical altercation with anybody.
Either, but I'm just saying I used to punk out. Like in high school, I would get punked all the time, and that's not. I mean, since I was now like I don't really anymore. And I think that's a good thing. Like, I think I was better back then because oftentimes, like, if you're getting, I hate to use that term, but if you're, as we used to say back then, getting punked, it really means you're being the bigger man and like avoiding a stupid confrontation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely, but you're totally right. Like, I'm just generalizing because I know plenty of people who had their asses kicked by their parents and they're much more well-adjusted than I am. So, I think it makes a difference on the market.
Well, what's so hard too is that like I'm not gonna lie, I definitely got some beatings. I did. And not even just by my mom, my aunt, my grandmother, because I lived with my grandmother and my mom in the same house for a while. And then even when we moved out, like I would still go over there a lot. My mom was working, whatever. So it didn't matter. Any of those ladies, if they wanted to beat me, they would beat me. My grandmother.
Did your white grandmother ever hit you?
What?
Did your white grandparents ever hit you?
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely. But I didn't even spend enough time over there I don't think anything ever really escalated to that. Like when you live with somebody, it's different. Not that I ever really did bad things. I was a very obedient child for the most part. But regardless, what's weird is that like when you're getting, hit by, your adults in your family or whatever, like you can't hit them back. And when you're little, if you did, you're gonna lose anyway, and it's probably just gonna get you beaten more. Mm-hmm. And so that's a weird thing when it comes to like growing up and like getting into fights in school. Like I personally never got into fights. I'm not trying to hit people. Like I'm just like, hey. And I always felt like I had so much anger in me that if I did hit somebody, like I would try to kill them.
See that part. That is why. Bianca, that is exactly why I try to avoid fights at all costs, because I feel like, yo, dude, you do not understand how much anger I have in me that I control on a daily basis to not seem insane. Like, so you just don't want to get into a physical, because once I get to that, I know myself. There's a certain level that I get to where I just go, and it's very animalistic type, deep. So like, I never want to tap into that. That's why I really try my hardest to avoid any physical thing, man. I just don't want to.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like getting beat by like your mom or your grandma, whatever, like it actually teaches you self-control, because like, you're definitely like, if I would have touched my grandmother back, oh hell no, I'm coming back with a nub. Like,
yeah. But then that also goes into why some kids then fight, right? Because if people are constantly beating you up at home and you're holding that in, right? When you're at school, someone says something to you, especially someone that's your size. Oh, what? You want to talk now? Like, oh, you want to what? You want to what? I get beaten by my dad. My dad is 6'3". What? You want to talk something? Like, so I totally can get the opposite. I can see why both those things. Exactly. So that's why I don't think it's one or the other. I really think it depends on the person and how they decide to survive after being.
And that's why it makes me, it's annoying to me when people are like, oh, well, I got beat, so I'm going to beat my kids. And it's like, well, you could also just go the opposite direction and not like.
But the crazy thing about humans is they have a very hard time sort of learning from tragedy that happened to them. A lot of the times, humans who've experienced tragedy, they're gonna then do that onto someone else. It's so weird. I don't get it. Like, if someone did something to you and you didn't like it and you understood how unfair it was, why then, now that you have the power, you're then going to do that same thing to someone else? Like, it doesn't make any logical sense, but a lot of abuse, people who are abused, they do the same thing. They pass it on to their kids. They're like, hey, my mom beat me, my dad beat me, I turned out fine. So that means if it turned out fine with me, if I beat my child, it's going to be fine. But it's not fine. It's not. I don't think.
Well, a lot of people aren't willing to do the work and look at themselves and realize that it's actually not fine. And they're like, their anger issues or whatever issues they have stemmed from that. They're like trying to cover it up, kind of,
Emotional.
We learn from our forebears, like as humans, all these things we have to do are so complicated, and we have no choice but to learn from the people who came before us. And if our parents, taught us how to eat, taught us how to shit, taught us all this, we still love them in most cases. It's kind of hard to be like, nah, they were wrong about that. That's a hard bridge to cross.
Why though? You can still, what is the difficulty with people admitting you can still love someone and care about someone, but admit that the thing that they did to you was wrong. I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see anything wrong with admitting that my mom was wrong, but still understanding why she made the decisions that she made. I can have both those going through my mind at the same time. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So,
that's mature of you, though. I think that takes a lot of emotional maturity for you to understand that. I think Jake's right, and I think that most people aren't able to do that. Like, they kind of see their parents as all good or all bad, like they're freaking Disney characters or something.
Right. I guess. You had touched on something earlier. I think the one thing that the Black community needs to sort of be in touch with is their emotional intelligence, right? That's something that I had to learn in my early 20s, something that helped me so much sort of control my emotions. It's sometimes we filter everything, all our emotions, through anger. If we're hurt, we feel it through anger. We're sad, it's filtered through anger. All of our complicated emotion, for some reason, always filter as anger. It goes through as anger. And we need to be more aware of, okay, right here, I'm actually sad. I'm not mad. I know I'm like feeling, but I'm actually sad. And when I feel like you're aware of these emotions, then you deal with them appropriately. You deal with your sadness then appropriately, instead of getting pissed off. When you're aware, when you're like, oh shit, I am sad right now, then you can go, maybe you need some time to go let some tears out, maybe you need some, whatever makes you feel better. But I think being more emotionally intelligent or aware will help in the fight of sort of, because when you think about it, a lot of the times when our parents like beat us, it's because they might be feeling a different emotion, but they filter it through anger, and then they think the only way to encourage us or discourage us is to then like get physical. So I think that would, that would help. She has a couple more things to say. Let me read you. She says, "To me, I am just me. If I am guilty of anything, it's disciplining in anger, not in disciplining." And I agree. I agree with that. It's not disciplining, because I think kids do need discipline. But I think you need to do more talking than actual physical. Like physical should be like the last. It should be like the last, so that if it's even brought up, you crossed the line. If it's constantly used, how do you know when you did something really severe, or it's just your mom, dad, whatever, just sort of pissed off? So it's good. Go ahead.
The bottom line is, like, we've known whenever psychologists or anyone tries to look at the data and crunch it, like, we know that hitting your kids probably on balance, like not with everyone, but on balance, leads to like an increased aggression, antisocial behavior, physical injury, and mental health problems for kids. So like, it just seems like it's like feeding your kids, it's like giving your kids like a little beer with dinner. It's like something we used to do in the past. Like just about everyone used to do that. Yeah. And like, we've just gotten smarter now, and we've kind of figured out you shouldn't do that shit anymore. So yeah, I mean, that's how I see it. And I think Lauryn's but that's the thing. I mean, I didn't read the statement from Lauryn, and she sounds like she's being self-aware and probably want to do it again. And I mean, that's something I think we should all respect.
And also, can we normalize like apologizing to your child too? You know what I mean? Because like, children need to understand that like, your mom like isn't just your mom. Like, she's a human being, or your dad or whatever. They're human beings, and like maybe they made an impulsive decision at the moment to hit you. You know what I mean? And then they need to go back and apologize. And even if it's years later, like maybe Lauryn needs to go to her daughter and apologize and be like, "I'm sorry if this caused you any pain throughout your life." Like, that shit is actually meaningful.
It is. To have your like parents come to you and humble themselves just that little bit and be like, "I did this thing." They don't understand it. That goes such a long way. I don't need anything after that. I'm like, what? You recognize that I'm a human, and it's
right.
We good. Like, and it's really much that simple, but it's all about pride, I think, sometimes with our parents. They, the old guard, they have, their pride is just, so it's like, how do you chip away at that when you have lived an entire life where pride has been your shield, where pride has been the thing that's helped you to sort of deal with life? Like, how do you, like, I think about that all the time, because I too want to, like, I too would love to sort of have a conversation with my mom about just life and growing up, and and it's just, yeah, it's hard to communicate with someone that has an enormous amount of pride, man. It really is.
And also, like, people, like, I could probably speak on, like, I made a film years ago, so like, I actually know this is true. Like, with my dad, he didn't hit me or anything, but he wasn't a great dad at all. And like, he was saying that I think he was saying that he felt like embarrassed, kind of like he doesn't know what to do next. Like, he didn't know, like, he doesn't even know how, like, when you feel so bad about something, how do I go to this kid and say sorry? That's admitting that I did something wrong. That's making myself super vulnerable. And I'm in a power position. And how are they going to then listen to me further, knowing that I made this mistake? I can't show them that I make mistakes.
But they already know. Yeah. We already know. Right. You know that you already, like, that's the whole point. The whole thing is that we're adults and we have adult brains, and we have recognized that you're not perfect. Mm-hmm. But if you don't come to it, like, with anyone, if you're in any relationship with anyone, if that person doesn't come in, if they've wronged you, whether it be your friends or your mate, and they wrong you, and they don't come to you and tell you that, hey, they recognize that they've wronged you, like, it's just, it's really, I know, like you said, it seems very complicated, but I really think it's so simple. Like, communication is That's really all it is. And I'm not saying what you need, but I'm sure if your dad came to you and just sat down and just said those words, I recognize that I was wrong when I made this decision, and like
all the decisions. Just say sorry for the life. My bad for the life.
I mean, I think that's what your dad was trying to get at. It's like, I bet just being even in your presence at some points was just so excruciating for him. So he knew he fucked up without getting into too much detail. So like that, I mean, I've never been in that situation, but I have like wronged people in my life before. And the impulse is just to avoid those people. You know,
right.
It's not even like apologizing as hard. It's like even seeing them across the street, like makes me feel like I'm going to die, you know?
Yep.
And,
that shit, as simple as it is, as Clyon says, it's actually so hard.
Because of pride. The only thing what makes it hard is because of pride, because you're afraid to humble yourself.
I think it's part of it, but yeah, it's beyond that.
Yeah, it's just like being vulnerable is just so hard. Even if you're not like prideful, it's just being vulnerable. Like,
but what makes it okay? Let me ask you a question. What makes it hard then? What makes being vulnerable hard? Think about that. What specifically about the act of being vulnerable makes it so hard? It
literally is a feeling in my stomach sometimes, like when I'm going into a situation like that. And I agree you should do it, and like I pride myself on
it's because you want to be accepted. I learned something today. I was listening to this podcast. It's because humans, right? We want to be accepted into our social group, and so we assume that if we go and we say that we're wrong, somehow the possibility of your community chastising you or putting you out of the community, because we all want to be part of this like knit, and we don't want to be, what is the word for being sort of thrown out? I'm sorry?
The out group or a pariah, something like that.
Right, but if you don't want to be thrown out of the group, then and we have this sort of built into us. So that thing that you're feeling is our inner core wanting to sort of belong, and feeling like if we then do this task, then we're not going to sort of belong or be part of the group, and they're going to chastise us and place us out of the group. Sort of.
And also, it's just like so scary too. Like think about, well, I don't know if this ever happens to you. You guys happen to have great bodies, but like imagine you're like, you know, insecure about your body and you're about to be naked in front of somebody. You know, it's like, oh, like I don't know, like if you have any body insecurities, but imagine Clan's like, no.
I don't like my feet. I don't like my feet. I don't like my feet.
Born buff.
I love your feet.
No, I hate my feet.
Right?
I also have
like having to be stripped down, and then you got to take those socks off.
Oh yeah, that's woo.
The light is on. And
No.
No, but I think that's a great metaphor, Bianca. Like it's like a part of your, it's like a part of your body you don't want to show off.
It's so being naked, pride.
I mean, I love being naked because I'm looking good.
Oh man.
Just to finish it up, just with her quote, she says, "If you come for me, come for your own mom, and those absent." If you come for me, come for your own mama. Sorry, let me say it right. And those absent fathers, come for them too. Your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, your great-great-great-grandparents, Caribbean parents, African parents, and everyone else damaged and judged for being black and forced to conform and assimilate to the Western standards of order. So yeah, that's Lauryn.
I mean,
Hill's.
does she? I mean, well, I don't know. I'm curious to know if it's part of like the African culture before we were brought over on goddamn slave ships to hit your child or whatever. I have no idea.
So there are primary sources from Europeans, like the first Europeans who went to Africa, and they actually criticized the West African group that they were with, who they didn't know who they were with. We don't know who it was. These white folks criticized them for not feeding their kids enough.
Wow, that's amazing. That's
yeah,
amazing.
but what we don't know, I mean, like that was two groups of, I think it was like two white guys who like didn't really get the culture very much, and it was like a very diverse place, West Africa. So probably a lot of stuff was going on. But it's
I
like I
think it
said,
has. Go ahead. Sorry, Jake.
as I said before, like my parents getting beaten up by their parents, that was accepted back then.
Yeah.
It's really none of my business to talk about this, but it sort of sounded like Lauryn Hill was saying, like, white people treat us like shit, so that means we're going to treat our kids like shit. And like that's sort of, I don't know. I don't know if I agree.
I think Jake doesn't want to step on a landmine.
Yeah.
I think what she's saying is that it has to do with sort of slavery. You know, it's learned behavior. It's learned from the slave master doing that, sort of how you keep control. And when you learn a lesson, and when you learn that this is how you keep control, you keep that going, and then you pass it on from generation to generation. And
I mean, because that shit worked. Unfortunately, right? That shit worked. It seemed like it, because like I bet, there was a bunch of slaves. I bet if they decided they all wanted to get together and rock the owner or whatever, then they could have, but they were controlled by this, this
right.
terror and violence. Also, they had no. I know there's many things that go into it, so I don't want to simplify it. But I think to them it seemed like, oh, like that shit works. Yeah, let's keep that up throughout the ages.
Yeah. And sometimes I think that's why, and this is a whole nother conversation about traditions. That's why I hate traditions frustrate me, because sometimes we pass stupid things down and we justify it by saying, oh, it's tradition. We've done this dumb shit from the get-go, so that's why we're doing it.
It's only my opinion. Coffee milk.